Okay, so picture this. It's Grammy night in Beverly Hills. You're thinking glitz, glamour, all that stuff. And then, suddenly, the scene just completely flips. Federal agents swarm a luxury hotel lobby. And their target? Veteran broadcaster Don Lemon. Now, this is so much more than just a shocking headline. This story really cuts to the very core of press freedom here in America. So, let's break down exactly what happened and why it really matters to all of us. Everything kicked off with the most dramatic moment you could imagine, a very, very public arrest. I mean, you couldn't write a more surreal scene if you tried. On one side, you have the absolute peak of entertainment culture happening in one of the most glamorous spots on the planet. And on the other, you have the cold, hard reality of federal law enforcement. That contrast, that clash of worlds, is exactly why this story just exploded. The timeline here is just so important. Late Thursday evening, Lemon's at his hotel. He's on assignment, covering the Grammys. Then, a little after 11 p.m., he's taken into custody right there in the middle of that busy public lobby. By the next morning, it is a national firestorm. You have to think, the timing and the location, well, they probably weren't an accident. It all feels designed for maximum impact, which immediately made people question the motives behind such a public takedown. And the response was immediate and forceful. Lemon's high-powered attorney, Abbe Lowell, he didn't just deny the charges. Right from the get-go, he framed this entire thing not as just some criminal case, but as a massive, high-stakes fight over the First Amendment and a potential abuse of government power. So the big question is, how on earth did a journalist covering the Grammys in California end up in federal custody? To figure that out, we've got to rewind a few weeks and travel 2,000 miles away to a protest in Minnesota. Yeah, the real origin of this arrest isn't in Beverly Hills at all. It's at a place called City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was right here that a confrontation between some protesters and churchgoers basically set the stage for all the legal drama that was about to unfold. And this is the critical point, because how you see this event really depends on which side you're on. There are two totally different ways to look at it. Was it a protest where demonstrators went into a church to make their voices heard about immigration policies? Or was it what the government says it was, a coordinated attack that violated the constitutional right to religious freedom? That one question, that's the foundation of this entire case. So this fundamental disagreement brings us right to the legal fault line. This is where the government and the defense are drawing their battle lines, arguing these two very, very different sides of the story. The whole thing really boils down to this one question. Was Don Lemon acting as a journalist, just documenting a protest that was newsworthy, which, by the way, is a constitutionally protected activity? Or did he cross some invisible line and actually become a participant in it? His entire defense, and maybe even the future of how protests are covered, it all rests on the answer to that. And get this, the legal path they took to even make these arrests, it was not straightforward at all. So first, prosecutors bring charges. But then, a magistrate judge, whose whole job is to see if there's enough evidence to move forward, looks at the case and says, nope, not enough evidence for Lemon and 4 others. But the story didn't end there. Prosecutors took a pretty unusual step. They went around that judge, directly to a grand jury. A grand jury operates in secret and only hears the prosecution's side of things. And that grand jury, they did return an indictment. This whole legal detour is a huge reason why critics are saying this whole thing feels political. And it's so important to remember this wasn't just about a famous TV host. The arrests also included activists and this is a big deal for press freedom, another journalist. Her name is Georgia Fort. She's a freelancer who was there filming for a documentary. Her arrest really highlights the risk for independent journalists who might not have the big resources of a major network behind them. So arresting 2 journalists in one fell swoop, that sent absolute shockwaves through the media world. It's raising some really urgent questions about the bigger picture here, what a lot of people are calling a potential chilling effect. The reaction from press freedom groups was immediate, it was unified, and they were all deeply concerned. And the language they used was pretty stark. The Freedom of the Press Foundation called it a chilling warning shot. The Committee to Protect Journalists warned the U.S. is sliding backward on this stuff. And Public Citizens straight up called it an authoritarian breach. They all see this as a dangerous move that's basically designed to intimidate reporters. And this really gets to the heart of why this story is so much bigger than the people involved. It forces all of us to ask a really fundamental question. When the government starts arresting reporters for just doing their jobs, what does that say about the health of our democracy? All right, so the battle lines are drawn, the stakes are incredibly high. The critical question now is, what happens next?
The outcome here is going to send shockwaves way beyond this one courtroom. I mean, a conviction could make prosecutors everywhere feel bolder about targeting journalists who are covering protests. On the flip side, an acquittal could end up being a powerful shield for the First Amendment. Either way you slice it, this case is going to carve out a major new precedent in American media law.
And that leaves us with this final, really crucial question. We live in a world where a smartphone can turn literally anyone into a live broadcaster, right? The old lines between being a journalist and a citizen, an observer and a participant, those lines have gotten really, really blurry. And this case is forcing us to face that new reality head on and ask, who gets to draw that line? And who's going to be held accountable when they do?